Hey everyone, this is Dan. Today we're gonna take a look at how we can modify and expand TouchDesigner's UI. We're gonna build this volume control. So the volume slider and the mute button, which will change the volume of every audio device out in our project. And we're gonna dive under the hood of the TouchDesigner UI. We're gonna write some Python code. But it's not gonna be too hard. You can add further stuff here as you like. On my Patreon, you can find my my expanded toolbar with some extra features that I added. For example, making the network grid go away, as well as global reset please. And also I have a script which lets you swap operators also. So I'm gonna keep expanding this on my Patreon. Consider supporting me there. But let's now dive into this audio control. Before moving on, I thought I would mention that if you don't feel comfortable with Python, then I have an online course with it together with Acrylic Code. It's called Getting Started with Python in TouchDesigner, and it's gonna get you up to speed for this video. Let's start with a clean slate and see how we can access TouchDesigner's UI from within TouchDesigner. You won't find it anywhere here in your network editor because it's a hidden thing. So to access it, we will have to type /UI into the bar up here. And then we get access to some things. We are interested in the dialogues based component. And here we have the bookmark bar, which is what we're going to be interested in. But just to show, there's also, for example, the main menu. If you wanted to expand this or change some things in the main menu, you could do it here, and so on. You can take a look around, take a look at the scripts and whatnot. So let's go into the bookmark bar. And this is our bookmark bar elements. As you can see, when I mouse over them, they also change here. So these are connected. These are the same things. And let's see how we can expand this. I'm gonna copy and paste this divider, and I want it to be next to this plus button. So I will look for this plus button, which is this. Its align order is 11. So if I change the align order for my divider to 12, then we have it on the right. I'm gonna make some space by increasing the width of it. Let's make it 80. And then I want to add a button for my mute button. So add a button panel. As you can see, this is kind of behind there. First off, we need to parent it to the empty panel. And then we need to change the height of it. And the height is 19, as you can see from these other buttons. And the width, let's make it 40. And the align order should be then 13 because this was 12. So now we have a functional button here. Next up, let's add a slider. I'm gonna bring up the palette with the Ctrl B, and under UI, basic widgets, you will find the slider horse. So it's a horizontal slider. I'm gonna again parent this to this empty panel, and then change the height to 19, the align order to 14. And let's get rid of the label, which is this thing. And then also let's get rid of this field. So we only have our slider. Let's rename this to volume. And I'm gonna decrease the width to like 200 maybe, or 150. Looks good, it works. And now if I wanted to save this, usually I get a warning here that whatever you save in here doesn't get saved actually, and we're gonna have to deal with it a bit later on with some script. So basically, if I were to save this project and restart it, all my stuff would be gone. We're gonna write a small install script later on to deal with this. And what I usually do is that I work on my UI things in here and the scripts and whatever, and I save them somewhere in my project, also like copy and paste them. So I'm gonna make a base comp here, call it toolbar, and I'm gonna in here also make a base component and call it containers. And I'm just gonna copy and paste these in here just to have all the settings here. So in case, you know, TouchDesigner crashes or something happens and this is gone when I reboot it, then I can just copy and paste this back in there and continue with my development. And that's what we're gonna do later on when we write the small install script. We're just gonna basically copy whatever is inside here to the UI dialogs bookmark bar. So that's kind of the trick that we need to do. But first I wanna create the skeleton for our global audio control component. So I'm gonna make another base component here and call it global audio control. And it's gonna have two parameters that we're gonna control with these two UI elements. So I'm gonna customize this component, add a float called volume, and also add a mute button called mute. So mute toggle. Now we have these, and we're gonna try and link them together. I'm gonna add a global OP shortcut to this base component in the command tab under global OP shortcut, and I'm gonna name it audio control, like so. And I do this so that I can refer to this component from wherever in my project. So for example, it would be here in the UI, and then if I write very short scripts to print this op.audio control. So this is the syntax to get the operator with the global OP shortcut. So op dot whatever we put here. And let's see, you can see that even though we are very far from this, we can just refer to it as op.audio control without any fuss. The only thing is with the global OP shortcuts is that you can have one name defined per project. So if I would copy this, then I have two of them, and I have a warning here that this is multiply defined. Anyway, we're cool with that. I will link the value of this volume slider to the value of our volume parameter, and also the state of the toggle, the mute toggle, to this button state. So I can actually just use a bind expression here. I already had it here, but I'm gonna write it again. op.audio control. So this is this component .bar.mute, and I don't want it as a expression, but as a bind expression. So now I can control from whichever way this state of this, and similarly to the volume value, I can write here op.audio control .car.volume. So now if I change this here, our global audio control also changes. Nice. Now let's make this button look a bit more fancy. So instead of this small text up here, I want an icon to be there. I want the speaker icon with a cross if it's muted, and the speaker icon when it's not muted. So to do that, we can use from the palette tools, there's a thing called material design icons. I drag it onto here. And if I enable the viewer of this, we can see that we have a bunch of icons we can use for our advantage. I'm gonna search for volume, and I want to use this and this. So to use these, I need to set the font of my text comp in the bottom mute to material design icons here. And what it does is, if we click on one of these, this will copy the icon code for this. Let's copy this one first, maybe. And it's gonna copy, as you can see, with yellow. Oh, maybe I don't see. Yeah, with the light yellow, you can see copied character 0xf blah 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 for volume off into copy buffer. So it just means that it copied the code for this. And now we can paste this here. And now we have this icon. So I want this icon when this is clicked and this is highlighted. So that means, let's make some row, that I want the volume high icon when this is 0. So I can just write a small expression here. I want this if op out 1 v1 is 1, else I want the other one. So you can see that this works. And I'm gonna increase maybe the font size. Never fits. Yeah, increase the font size a little bit here. Maybe we can remove the padding. Yeah, I think this is as good as it gets. And now we can clearly see. Nice. I think that's about TUI. Let's check if everything is still working here. Let's set the global audio control. Changing the volume changes, muting, mute goes off. Nice. I would also like for this volume slider to be disabled when we are in mute. So we can just reference our mute in the enable parameter of this slider. So we can say lp.audio control.bar.mute, and we probably need to, we need to invert this logic so it's not. So now when we are muted, we cannot interact with this slider. So that's something that I wanted. And now we're mostly done with the UI stuff. We just need to write some Python code to install this whenever we start TouchDesigner. And also we need to implement our global audio control. So now is a good time to copy and paste this to our containers so that we have everything saved. And I think next up we should write the install script actually. I'm gonna set the UI stuff aside for a second. Let's make some room. And I'm gonna add a text that here where we can write our script. And first off, we need a reference to this path here. So we're just gonna copy this, and I'm gonna say target equals this operator, so this bookmark bar. This is gonna be our target. and we need a reference to all these things that we want to copy in there. And to do that, I can just list all the operators inside this container, inside this containers base count. So it would be containers equals op containers, and to list all the operators inside, I can say ops and an asterisk. So it's a wildcard. It's going to list everything inside. And let's see it printed. So I'm just gonna run this with a Control R, and we can see that we have the divider in there, the button mute, and the slider volume. So for each of these, maybe I will leave this up like so. For each of these list elements, we will copy them one by one to the target. So for cont in containers, so this is just going to give us each of these one by one in this cont temporary variable, looping through this containers list. For each of these, I want to copy them into the target. So target.copy cont. And let's see if we now delete this. I think we saved everything in our containers, so it should be okay to delete. If we delete them and run this, we can see that they appeared. They were copied from inside the containers into here. Let's try it again, just for good measure. Cool. So I also want to move them to have them appear here, not in the middle. So I can have a reference to each newly created operator here. If we say new op equals this target copy, and we can move them around with new op.nodex, and I found these values to work for me. Nodex equals 400, new op.node y equals -400. Let's see what happens now. Oops, there's now multiple of them, and they are all on top of each other. So we need to offset this node x for each of them, and I'm just gonna enumerate this containers. So it's gonna give me an index going from 0 to the number of elements, and also the element. So I'm gonna have the index in I, and here I can just say plus I times 200, and now they are spaced apart. Also, I want to get rid of this issue that if I run this multiple times, multiple of these appear, because it's gonna really mess up everything. And what I would really want to do is, if there's already the same containers in the UI, then I want to delete them and override them with the new containers, whatever they may be. So I can check if they already exist in there with this if clause, if target.op container.name. So we're just going to check for the name. If it's already in there, it is not none. We're checking if the operator is there with the name is the correct way to say it. So if it's already there, we can also just say if target.op container.name. So if this operator exists already with the same name, we're gonna destroy it. So we're gonna say .destroy. So if we comment out these things here and just run this, it's gonna destroy everything. with the same name of this containers. So now anytime we run this, it's not gonna overwrite. It's not, it's gonna overwrite the previous ones with the newly copied ones, but it's not gonna just copy and copy and copy. Now we can also be a bit more fancy with our Python, and we can say that, and I don't know, I will just name this underscore op, and we can use the walrus operator, which is gonna evaluate this into this temporary parameter, temporary variable here. And here we can say instead this underscore op. This can be, of course, any valid name. So this works, and it's a bit more Pythonic. So if we noticed, then yeah, something is still missing because this is all messed up. We are missing these links, these parent connectors to be connected. So we need to write a beautiful expression to connect these. And to get the reference to this, I think we can bring up a browser here and look for conf class. And here we can look for connector. So you can see input comps, list of input components to this component through its top connector. So this is gonna be a reference to this thing, but first we just want to get a reference to the input comp connectors. So that we can connect to this connector somehow. And the expression that we need to use here is, so for each new operator that we copied, we want to connect to the input comp connectors, and it's actually a list in case there are multiple, but there's just one here. I'm gonna index it with 0. Actually, let's debug this, see where we are. And I know it's a list because here it says that it returns a list of input connectors. So let's run this and look at our text port. And we can see that it's in fact giving us a connector. So these connectors, if we look at the documentation here, they have a method called connect, and it can connect to another connector or an operator. So let's connect this to this thing. We need to connect this to the empty panel here. So it would be target.op empty panel. So this gives us a reference to this empty panel dot output from connectors 0. So this gives us a reference to this connector, and it's just gonna connect this connector to that connector. Let's run it, and voila, we have it connected, and now our UI is pretty again. I'm gonna name this to script install, and I wanna run this script install with an execute that, and we're gonna run it on start and also on create. We can just run it with op script install .run. But actually, maybe it's a good idea to delay this run after the start. So I add delay frames. Let's delay it by, I don't know, 30 frames. And we can check how it performs. Let's remove this for a second. Let's simulate what happens when we start up. Cool. And the onCreate. So the difference between the start and the onCreate is if you hold Alt and mouse over, this runs when TouchDesigner starts, and this runs when you, for example, copy and paste this component. So like this, we have we have our install script, and we can also test this if we restarted TouchDesigner, that everything would install. And now if we wanted to add more buttons, more functionality to our toolbar, again, we would develop the stuff here to see it actually. And once we are comfortable with what we have, then we just copy and paste it into these containers. So it's very easy to expand on this thing. And now we can implement our global audio control so that it actually does something. I'm gonna get rid of this. I think we're good with the UI. And let's go into our project 1 container. Let's put down some audio device outs, like 3 of them. Let's just leave them there for now. Good. So here I'm gonna put down an op find that so that we can find these operators. We're gonna start looking from the root of our project. So it's just this /, and we're gonna not limit the depth. So limiting depth is off. And we only want to look for audio device out chop types. And to know what type an operator is, we can quickly drag this onto here. And you can see that the type is audio device out chop. And we can use this in the filters type audio device out chop. So we have these. I want to have their paths probably, so columns. I don't really care about the type because I know I care about the path. Cool. Gonna add a null OPs. And next I want to change the volume parameter of these when the volume of our component, or it's the same thing, the UI volume slider changes. So I'm gonna put down a parameter execute, look in the parent of this component and look for the parameter volume. And I want to run a script, a short script, when this changes. So I'm gonna also add a text that script will change. I'm gonna name it. I'm gonna change the control language to Python. And now we need to write our script. So when the volume changes, I want to loop through all these operators and set their volume. So actually, let's get rid of the name column. We don't need it. And let's get rid of the first row. We also don't need that. Select rows by index from the first row. And let's loop through these. So for AOP in OP null OP is equal 0. So this gets us this column. And when we loop through these, it's gonna give us in this AOP the cells. Maybe I just call it C for cell. I call it cell. So for cell in this that table column, we're gonna say op cell.val dot bar, so the cell.val gives us this string, and dot bar dot volume with a small v dot volume equals, and now we have to get a reference to our parent parameter volume, parent dot bar dot volume with a big V, capital V, dot eval. It's gonna give us a float for sure in that case. So let's change our volume to something and run this script, and voila, it changed the volume in all of them. Let's try it again. Great. So we also wanna deal with the mute button. First, yeah, let's actually link this to our script. So in our parameter execute, we have the volume here. We can also add the mute as a scope. We're gonna use it later on. And on value change of these parameters, let's call our script dot run. So let's try it, and it works. Nice. Okay, and now let's deal with the mute. So for the mute, it's gonna be pretty simple. And we are gonna look at if the mute is on, then we set it to 0. If the mute is off, then we set it to the volume. So we can say 0 if parent.bar.mute.eval. If this is true, if mute is on, then we set it to 0, else we set it to the volume. So let's see if it works. And it works very nicely, yeah. Next up, let's check what happens when we add a new audio device out. Audio device out. The volume is set to 1, so we need to do something about it. That when we add the new audio device out, it gets updated with the global audio level. So to do that, we add a that execute, and whenever this changes, this table changes, then we will execute our script again. So I can just copy and paste this on table change, do that, and let's add an audio device out again, and now we have the correct volume. Let's try it with 0, audio device out. Yes, cool. This is what I wanted. It works very well. And lastly, I want to check what happens if we set this to mute and restart the project. I expect this to stay in the same state. So let's see if it happens. And after a few restarts, just testing, yes, I can say that this stays muted when we restart the project if it was muted before, which is good. And for last time, let's see it working actually with an audio file in with our beloved song. And everything works very well. Nice. And yeah, as I said before, you can easily expand this toolbar with anything you would like. You just need to navigate to the UI of TouchDesigner. So again, it was /UI/dialogues/bookmark bar here, and you can add your UI components in here with scripts inside them or whatever inside them. Just make sure that you copy and paste the new stuff into the containers of the toolbar component that we made, so that it installs each time you start TouchDesigner with this script, with this little script. As I mentioned before, you can find the extended toolbar that I made on my Patreon. It has some cool features, like the swapping of operators, like disabling the network grid, disabling the background viewer jobs, like also the global reset, so that it pauses every reset in your component, in your project, sorry. And yeah, just have a look around my Patreon. I do a lot of utility slash workflow things around TouchDesigner, but I also do some visual things. So yeah, consider checking it out, supporting, but also just subscribing to my channel is also a big help. And I hope you found this useful, and take care. Ciao.